I would categorize this budget as politically cute and economically foolish. Now, in spite of many proclamations over the last few years that we're not going to see a return to the boom and bust election-type budgets, this budget is exactly that. So what does it do? It gives a lot of people a little bit of money back via income tax and USC. And most people have suffered through the economic recession, and a little bit of breathing space is obviously welcome. However, all of this tax is offset by water charges. So the result, the net result this year for households, is that the total amount of taxes collected from them will remain the same. But the net amount collected from higher income households will drop, and the net amount collected from lower income households will go up. What that means is that the tax changes in this budget, together with the water charges, don't change total tax. They simply move the burden from higher income households to lower income households, something that shouldn't have been done. The budget also avoids cutting spending where spending should have been cut. Now, there's an additional $500 million in new measures, including social housing, which I'm very glad to see. There's an additional $900 million for something called demographic pressures, the detail of which is difficult to find because it's scattered throughout about 200 pages of Minister Howland's report. There's $800 million in savings that were meant to happen, which have now not happened. And the result of all this, Las Ciancórla, is that spending was meant to reduce next year by €1.4 billion to address the deficit and the national debt. And instead of spending being reduced by €1.4 billion, spending is being increased by €1.4 billion. And this is in spite of very real opportunities to save money. Let's take healthcare. We're all very concerned about healthcare. What do we know? We know there's been an overspend this year in healthcare of about €500 million. Now, there's two ways you can tackle that. You can give the healthcare system an additional €500 million, or you can find €500 million that shouldn't be spent and take it out of the healthcare system. The answer in this budget is give them the money. Now, this is in spite of very real opportunities to save money, Las Ciancórla. In my budget submission, I demonstrated how over €1 billion a year can be saved by moving from the amount we spend in Ireland on pharmaceuticals per capita to the amount that's spent in the UK. We do two things. You mandate generics wherever possible, and you work with the NHS to leverage their better buying power, saving €1 billion a year. Now, Deputy Adams stated earlier on that the healthcare system is underfunded. I would respectfully disagree. When you adjust for our young population, in Ireland, we have the second highest healthcare spend per capita on earth. Only the Americans spend more money on healthcare. Our healthcare system is not underfunded. It is badly run. And unfortunately, the answer for next year is not to make it better run, it's to give it more money. They are throwing more money into a bad system rather than fixing the system. Now, while this budget has the feeling of Fianna Fáil budgets during the boom, there's one very important difference. Fianna Fáil did give away budgets with budget surpluses. This budget is a giveaway budget with borrowed money. So what's the result? Instead of closing the deficit, this budget actually increases measures to increase the deficit to the tune of €1 billion, €1 billion. So had the government done nothing, the budget deficit would have fallen. This budget, at a time when we're still borrowing €5 billion, this budget increases the deficit. The Troika aren't out of here a wet week. So who are the winners? The single biggest winners I can find in all this are landowners, which is not surprising. Fine Gael are appealing to one of their bases. There's 11 separate taxation policies for landowners in here. And the other winner, I guess, is high earners. They do marginally better. The money they'll get back in reduced taxes will more than offset the water charges, so they're better off. However, as parents, and arguably as taxpayers, they're not better off. Which brings us to the losers. So if landowners and high earners win, who loses? Lower income households obviously lose. They get a little bit back in lower income tax, and more than that is taken away from them in water charges. The self-employed have taken a hit again, something I cannot understand. Why this government would bring in an 11% USC charge just for the self-employed. I don't understand what this government has against the self-employed. Why do self-employed people have to pay tax at 11%, but if you're in a PAYE job where you're not taking the risk of someone who's self-employed, you only have to pay it at 8%? I can't understand that. The negative equity generation has been completely ignored. There were opportunities to help them through the local property tax, to help with mortgage difficulties, all been ignored. No changes have been made to the costs of childcare. Now, we have the second highest childcare costs on earth, and what that means is there's a lot of parents at home who want to work, who are ready to work, who could get jobs in the morning, but who can't afford to go back to work. I looked at my budget submission at what a parent in Dublin or Wicklow with 2 kids would have to earn. And it turns out, based on current taxation, they'd have to earn €50,000 just to break even. So €50,000 would pay their tax bill, their childcare bill, and the cost of going to work. At a €70,000 salary, they'd be worse off than the basic social welfare. Nothing has been done. Lone parents have seen a very marginal increase, but nothing has been done to reverse the really horrific cuts that lone parents have seen. Over the last 5 years, the increase in deprivation for lone parents has gone from 1 in 4 to 1 in 2. 1 in 2 lone parents in Ireland and their children now experience deprivation. Students lose out. Students at primary level, secondary level, and third level. The pupil-teacher ratio is being maintained, but it is not being brought down. Schools are seeing further cuts to their capitation grant, and the ongoing per-student cuts to higher level education are continued in this budget. Pensioners and anyone with a private pension loses out. The 0.15% levy to the pension fund is being maintained in spite of previous promises from the minister that he would get rid of it. The question, therefore, is, Lascian Corla, what should have happened in this budget? The Irish people have put up with a lot to cut the deficit. But this effort should not have been abandoned just because there might be an election next year. Efficiency savings, like the savings that can be got through smart purchase of pharmaceuticals, should have been identified and pushed through. They haven't been. Education should have been invested in. Education is the single biggest threat and opportunity to the future prosperity of this country. And if you look at the budget, the total amount going to education is actually falling. It is absolutely extraordinary. The cost of childcare should have been addressed. There was a promise from the Taoiseach that these things would be sorted and that we would have a Scandinavian-style childcare model. Well, as a parent of 3 kids, I can assure anyone that we certainly do not have a Scandinavian-style childcare model. The negative equity generation should have been supported. This could have been done through a fairer local property tax, which took account of negative equity, which took account of stamp duty paid in separate years, and a much more hands-on approach to tackling the mortgage crisis could have been taken. There's cross-party agreement on this. The Finance Committee has published a very good report which identifies a whole raft of problems and lack of fairness and lack of transparency within the mortgage crisis. A lot of that could have been addressed here. Entrepreneurs and the self-employed should have received the same taxation burden and supports as PAYE workers. Self-employed people and entrepreneurs should not have been hit in this budget with a higher taxation rate just for them. And finally, the budget should have been tested for equality. I've been asking for 3 years now that when the ministers come in with these documents on budget day, that we would be provided with a distributional analysis. Again, they have refused. Every single year they've refused. I asked then Taoiseach the Deputy Gilmore if he'd do this, and he responded by calling me an opportunist. I asked Minister Howlin if he would do this as a minister in the Labour Party, and he said it wouldn't be reasonable to test crisis-level budgets for equality. Now, arguably, the time you need to test for equality is during a crisis, because that's when a lot of nasty and painful decisions get made. So, yet again, we don't know who this hits hardest. My sense is it will yet again be another regressive budget. My sense is that yet again women will be hit harder than men, but we don't know. So we're all going to be asked to vote through measures when we don't know what the distributional effect of those measures is. In short, Lascian Corla, this budget should have maintained financial discipline. It should have targeted support where it was most needed rather than where it was felt the votes were. It should have boosted entrepreneurship, not penalised it, and it should have invested in education. Rather than looking to the next election This budget should have looked to the next decade and to the next generation, and it unfortunately failed to do so. Thank you.